great. I think we'll get.
No, you guys are a serious group of people here. I mean, from the offices and the setup.
Yeah.
I'm impressed.
Thank you. Okay, cool. So we're here back at the Real Estate Roundtable with IPRG, and today we want to talk about ground-up development and the condo market and land prices and just real estate in general. We have Arik Bar Chaim here as a guest. Welcome.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. Nice to be here, guys.
Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity.
100%. So we're also here with Justin and Donal, and we were just talking before we started recording, and we've sold Arik a number of pieces of land.
Right.
I mean, I guess a lot of these were actually houses on like 25 by 100 foot lots, but
yes.
with residential zoning, and you put together, like these 25 footers, you put together 50 footers. You're buying off of us now, I think, what is it, an 86 footer?
It's it's a 62 and a half with conjunction to 223.
Yep.
It's an 87 and a half footer.
Yeah.
It's 87 and a half by 100. Is that the biggest? It's great.
Yes. Yes, actually it is the biggest. So far, yes.
Yeah. And yeah, there's an existing structure there too. That's a pretty interesting deal. It's multiple lots and subdivision of an existing lot.
Yes. This property was very complicated to analyze. Me and Donald spent a lot of time on it. But there's a house on it. There's a vacant land portion on it. So what we're doing, we're subdividing it. We're cutting it at the building line, renovating an alteration, relatively quick alteration one rental building, which we just discussed before.
That's the brick structure.
That's the brick structure.
You're doing it in alt one.
We're doing an alt one. It's an existing 5-family. We're keeping it as a 5-family for tax purposes and maximizing the value of the building in case the exit would be to sell. And then on the vacant portion, we're building a new building. So we're also transferring air rights from the existing building to the new lot in order to have the absolute, perfect layout for the NB.
And the NB is gonna be across both lots, 221 and 223?
No, so 223 was too far along.
Got it.
We actually started that. We finished up the demo, and we're building a separate 25-footer there. But it'll be a nice 37.5-footer, 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom building, elevator that goes directly into the units. The way I like the setup.
Beautiful.
Yes, I've learned, and you mentioned Medicine before, 959 Medicine
Yeah.
from Bushwick.
That was a 33-footer, right?
That was a 33-footer, and that's what I did over there.
Yeah.
And, I thought it would be like a gimmick, but the 3 units are sold first, or the 3 units that the elevator goes directly into the apartment. People love that. I think it's the first building in Bushwick. I might be wrong. I think it's the first building in Bushwick that did this. Nobody really wants to put the money there yet to do those kinds of stuff, but we did, and it paid off.
Yeah.
So the same thing we're doing in Williamsburg. Obviously, it's not a new concept to Williamsburg, but it's apparently a beautiful concept that people love.
Yeah.
So the elevator shaft goes right in the center of the building, then opens directly into the units. Every floor has 2 units. And what it allows us to do also is to minimize hallway space. When I design these buildings, I always think how I can minimize hallways, unusable space. That's why I really love the layout of a bedroom, living room, bedroom in those units, as opposed to a living room, bedroom.
Yeah.
Because then you have that hallway to go into the bedrooms. This classic layout, this hallway is unusable square footage. But when you have the bedroom, living room, bedroom, there's not a single square footage in this apartment that's a non-usable square footage. And people feel how bigger the unit is. So it's just an overall, I found out over the years that people prefer that layout. Sells better.
It's great.
That's what we're doing there.
Yeah,
It's
it
gonna be
seems
a nice
paid
building.
off. Yeah.
And a lot of the product that you deliver doesn't have really high maintenance costs for the end user, right? Like for the most part.
Correct. It does not. These buildings usually the common charges are comprised of, regular stuff like cable company, fire alarm, insurances, with, maybe a super, which all the buildings have. When you have an elevator, increases a little bit more.
Yeah.
By a couple of tens of bucks a month, but that's about it.
Yeah.
Common charges are very low. People love that a lot.
Yeah,
Got it.
some,
Yeah, I
some of the bigger buildings, could go, you have 2,000, 2,500 a month in maintenance if they have a lot of amenities.
Exactly. So you have those amenities, which is a bonus, but at the same time, you have those crazy monthly costs not everybody can afford.
Yeah.
Yeah, personally, I think that's like a real turnoff to me, and I think that's why the condo market in Williamsburg, Bushwick, some of these 25 by 100 footers, they do so well, because it's like they're buying a condo, they're not having that huge weight of an HOA fee,
Right.
the taxes, because they don't have to pay for an indoor pool, they don't have to pay for the gym. Like in some of these buildings on one wall across the street from us, their HOA fees, what they have to pay, are just so high.
Very, very high.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, you can get a $20 membership today at a gym,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right?
I don't need a gym in my building,
or,
really.
Or a $300 a month membership,
Or
depending on
$300 a month, depending on where you
Yeah.
go to. But yeah, you don't really
Yeah.
need that
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
It's a good point, Donal. I see those buildings. I saw that in Prospect Heights because I built 349 Prospect Heights, and we just sold it now in the midst of the crisis, the interest rate crisis. Obviously, things slowed down tremendously, but we still were able to sell it for an average of, $1,400-$1,500 a square feet. We're talking about a walk-up building.
Yeah.
And there's this big amenity building in Prospect Heights. That's like the big comp. I forgot the address. It's right on the main avenue. But it's so expensive. It's so the units there are so expensive.
Is that
People-
one Prospect Park West, right?
No,
No, I
not
think.
this one.
Are you referring to like Washington Avenue or?
I'm referring to Washington Avenue. No, actually not Washington
There's some really expensive
Avenue.
properties right there off Eastern Parkway in Washington.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I'll remember
Yeah.
the name of the street. I'll check in a sec. But there's a big amenity building, overlooks the train, very close to Barclays Center. Considers to be in Prospect Heights. One bedrooms go for over $1 million.
Yeah.
So you can go to one of these buildings, you can pay $2,000 a month,
Yeah.
common charges, and get a gym and a pool, and pay $1 million plus for a one bedroom with an okay layout. Or you can come to one of our boutique buildings and buy a better layout apartment for $800,000 and pay $200 a month common charges. So what would you do? So it depends on the buyers, but I feel it's a better product. Nominally, it's cheaper. And you don't get less.
So, so the common charges here are really that low on your properties.
Yes, because on a walk-up building, you don't have much.
Yeah.
What do you do regarding the taxes? Like these are NBs, right? So these are
Right.
ground up construction.
That's an excellent question. First of all, every development that I do,
Real estate taxes.
yes,
Yes. Yeah.
every development that I do, I try to first thing see if I can file it as an alteration. Because if I can somehow file it as an alteration, the end taxes would be lower.
Have you done that?
I have.
Okay.
I have 1230 Bedford Avenue. 1230 Bedford Avenue is an alteration type 1 building. It had a commercial floor. We did a vertical and horizontal extension on the building. That's how we
Nice.
filed it.
Yeah.
The end taxes came out to be less than $30,000 a year for the whole building.
How many units?
You're talking about an 8-family, 850 square feet, 2-bed, 2 bathrooms, elevator building, and a commercial store on the first floor. $30,000 for the whole building.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
Okay, so that's on the verge of a tax abatement.
are you able to convey that like value add to the end buyers in that situation?
Absolutely.
And so you could
You
get
know,
you could
we
translate it
use
to a higher
that.
price.
Yes, we
Yeah.
used that in our marketing, and we broke record. We sold units on Bedford. Specifically, I remember the penthouse we sold for I believe it was $1.6 million, guys. It was a 3-bed, about 1,000 square feet. with a private roof deck, one of the variables were the low taxes.
Yeah.
The rest of the units in the that was an anomaly maybe, but even the rest of the units in the building, we sold for $1,300 a foot on average, I believe. You're still talking Bed-Stuy. You're still talking a main road, a busy road, Bedford Avenue. So that was very, very impressive. People put a lot of weight on the low monthlies.
And how about on the NBs, the new builds?
Yeah, so on the NBs, it's a challenge. People got used to it on the better areas, but if you're building a building in Bushwick or Bed-Stuy, it's tough. It's tough to have people pay these amounts of money, and it affects your price at the end that you're
Because
able
the
to
real
sell.
estate taxes.
Correct.
How does it work? Like, how do you calculate the real estate taxes on an NB, or how does that get passed on to the condo buyers? Or, you see these condo units that have 421As. Is that something that's even in the game anymore?
421A expired as of now, as well as the J51 and other programs that developers used to use. The only thing that applies today and applied before in the past, and I tell that to all my buyers, whether it's an NB, an Alt1, it doesn't matter. If you purchase a condo to live in it, you can get a 17.5%, or I believe it's 17% discount. If you're going to live in the unit, if you're not going to rent it out as an investor, you're eligible for that.
Discount on the real estate taxes?
Correct. You get a 17% discount. It's just a matter of filing it in time, and you get it.
Got it.
That's as of
I didn't
right.
know that.
But there's no tax abatements. No.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So people in better areas have gotten used to paying. You know that, Justin. You work so much in these areas as well.
Yeah.
They've gotten used to pay, hundreds of thousands. One bedrooms can pay easily $7,000-8,000 a year. In taxes, $700 a month.
And how about for the bigger units?
Yeah, even more. 2 bedrooms, tax would typically be more than $1,000 a month. So that's why we do try to Alt1 those buildings if we can. 2 to 3 frost. We did file as an alteration type 1, so it'll be interesting to see what the taxes will come out to be. You asked how they're being calculated.
On an NB?
Yes.
Yeah.
On an NB or an Alt1 or anything for that matter. I don't know the exact formula, but they do take into consideration, the Department of Finance does take into consideration whether it's an NB or an Alt1, and I've seen it firsthand with the buildings that I've built. The Alt1s were taxed significantly lower than my NBs. It was a big deal.
So I was looking, before you came in. So you've done like 20 or more projects in
Yes.
New York, right? And I don't know about like how many units you've actually sold versus how many are in development, but it's like well over 100 units.
Yeah, that's about right.
That's
Yes.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
So how'd you what was the first deal? What was your first real estate deal? Was it a condo deal? Was it something else?
Yes, it's a good. I mean, I guess my first deal was as an investor. That's how I got started to begin with.
Okay.
I was in Israel back then. I was working as a CPA in KPMG. It's a global firm.
Yeah.
You've probably heard
Yeah.
of it.
Know it.
But it wasn't for me, and I got connected with a group of friends that were doing real estate here. They purchased a parcel of lot in Bushwick on Wilson Avenue, 46 Wilson Avenue. And I got in with them, and we built this building, and we sold, and I saw the process and how it went, and my eyes were like, oh my God, I gotta come here and try to do this myself. So that was kind of my first deal, but I was very passive in it. I was an investor. When I came here, I started working as a project manager just to learn the ins and outs of the zoning rules, how to build, and obviously with time, I got connected with investors and banks and all the other stuff that you need in order to put together a deal. The first deal I did, I believe it was a condo deal, of course, and it was 77 Kingsland Avenue.
Yeah.
So it's
I know.
yeah, the location was off. It was in East Williamsburg, but it paid off. We built a nice building there, and from then it just grew. I kind of learned how these properties are best developed, and it went from there. Yes, we did one after the other.
And when you say how they're best developed, is that like you bought a lot of these 25 footers?
Yeah.
So you just like got like the program down and like the layouts, and is kind of like rinse and repeat, just build like a similar building each time?
Yes. So in the beginning, it was a lot of trial and error. In the beginning, I was researching a lot of different layouts, elevators, walk-ups, 4 units, 6 units, 7 units. When I started working, I predominantly worked in East Williamsburg, and I think that every person has to match the product that he does to who he thinks the audience is going to be at the end of the day. And East Williamsburg is predominantly still a young neighborhood. It's a young neighborhood. Young families, young professionals, Google workers, Microsoft workers, accountants, attorneys, people who work in the city. So I figured it's better for me to build smaller, efficient units, whether it's a small 1-bedroom, small 2 bedrooms, and this really paid off. This was definitely the correct strategy for that neighborhood, and this is why the project was so successful. I've seen similar projects, same size, same zoning, selling for $1 million less. And the difference was the planning, the layout behind those buildings, just to kind of match it better with the audience. So that's what we did, and it paid off.
Yeah, I mean, from looking at some of your projects, obviously the East Williamsburg projects from when you first started, I mean, you always had a pretty good finger on the pulse of like what a young person would want, like especially someone living in Williamsburg.
Right.
That be like the type of stoves you put in or the type of islands that you did.
Right.
And I even see it in the new buildings that we toured together. Like you still do that stuff, but those are very important things when someone's looking to buy a condo. I see a lot of other sites or a lot of new development projects where even the kitchens, for example, it's just one side flat kitchen where it doesn't, I don't think appeals to like the younger generation as much as how you have like that where you can put bar stools. So certain things like that I think really do well.
Absolutely.
When selling.
Absolutely. It's the finishes, it's the design. People like to work from home today, especially with everything that happened with it. When I started, there was no pandemic, but I was still thinking about those things. How can I take a unit and still create a nook in the apartment that people don't have to work in the living room? Because I noticed that I'm selling these units and people just put a working table inside their living room next to their couch. So I was starting to think, how can I create nooks inside the living room, maybe take a portion of the bedroom, create a nook that people can put a table and work separately. And people appreciate those kinds of things. So you can get 2 units that have essentially the same square footage in the same area, but their layout differentiates them. You know, the way they can be used. So that's what I try to do. Creativity, I feel, is the name of the game.
For sure.
You know, so it is a rinse and repeat, but you still have to try to be, every project you have to try to be more creative than the project that you did before. You know, so it's a rinse and repeat, but you gotta improve it, perfect it, in those terms.
All right, and then so when you're out looking to buy these development sites and you get like listings from us, I mean, we oftentimes just throw like a price per buildable square foot on it based on other similar, lots that are selling, and we go to the owners that have these houses or these lots, and we basically just price it off of our pretty simple formula of price per buildable square foot.
Right.
But when you get these listings and you're looking at the valuation, are you doing like a full type of underwriting, development underwriting in terms of acquisition costs and financing and hard costs and soft costs and projected sellout, or do you have it just narrowed down to be like, oh yeah, I'll pay $400 a buildable or whatever the price may be?
You know, I love that question.
Okay.
Because many people do it that way.
Yeah.
And it's not good to do it this way. because you do have different variables that go into different lots. Even though they can be the same 25 by 100 R6Bs, they're still different. Some lots have higher water tables. You can't do a proper basement. That will dramatically affect your sellout. Some, there's different. Some sites are E-designated, so you have to clean the soil. You have to go through certain agencies in the city to get those things done. Some are MTA. There's MTA work related around them if they're in proximity to an above ground train or below ground train. So you have to take all of those things into consideration when you look at a property, especially when you work with investors, you work with other people's money. It's very, very important to analyze the risk factors to make sure that you can deliver on the business plan that ultimately you're showing them.
Yeah.
So I do detailed budgets, but it's quick.
Okay.
It doesn't take days. It takes a couple hours because you do have those formulas and price per square footage is that you use. So you can get a quick feedback to you guys, to the person who's selling the property, but also a knowledgeable feedback. I don't like to come up and just say it's worth less. I like to explain why. It doesn't always help.
Yeah.
Because the price threshold for, I would say, $2.5 million properties and under is low. Is low. A lot of starter investors, starter developers would be willing in many cases to pay more. And I admit I was like that in the beginning as well.
Chasing deals?
Yes.
I think everyone is.
Overpaying just to get projects going?
Yes.
Yeah.
I looking back, there's a couple of projects that I probably would not have taken, knowing everything that I know today, which was a mistake. Because I should have taken them because they did end up well, but they had risks that today I would probably be less willing to take. It's just then I was inexperienced and I wasn't fully aware of those risks. That's the difference.
So you mentioned risk factors. What are the buckets of the primary risk factors on a project?
Right. I think it's probably the most important topic.
Okay.
When you talk about development, probably all over the world, and specifically in New York. When you approach investors, the tendency, a lot of entrepreneurs, the tendency is just to speak about the good things. Obviously, nobody wants to speak about the less appealing things and the risks. So they stress the fact, we can get you this and this return per year, but they do not discuss the risks. I almost think it would be a smarter decision from an investor's point of view to get less per year if he knows that the risk factor is lower. So people don't really know how to assess risks, and they rely on the developers and the entrepreneurs. That creates a lot of issues. There's so many examples of things going south because of those reasons. So if you're asking about buckets, the first thing I would say is situation with neighbors. It's the first thing I would look at. I would look at how much of the situation with the neighbors will allow me to build a smooth building. Obviously, there's always going to be some issues, but you want to make sure that you're not going into a situation that can delay you for years. Okay?
Yeah,
So
they can really ruin your life.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, for example,
And they could cost you a lot of money, right?
a tremendous amount of money.
Yeah. With access agreements. And
Access agreements and stuff like that. You would want to avoid, you can't always avoid, obviously, but you would want to avoid a situation where you have a huge neighbor, a huge building next to you with a lot of tenants and a complex ownership structure. Because then you have to speak to so many people to get even the simplest things agreed to. The law is on your side, the developer side, when it comes to those things in a way that they have to give you permission to protect their building while you're building. They cannot say, no, we don't agree for you to put protection on our property so you can't build yours. But they can extort you during that process.
Yeah.
They can drag you to a court of law. accrue legal fees, ridiculous excess fees and stuff like that. So, definitely to a starter developer, I would not recommend to go and build a development next to a neighbor like that. I would look to see if I can the condition of the foundation of the neighbors, because depending on the depth of the neighbors' foundations, it'll kind of determine if you can do a basement on your building.
You're saying on a piece of land.
On a piece of land or on a building that you knock down, or on a building that you alter and you want to deepen to create foundation to, or deeper basement to, you need to know the situation of the basement, of your neighbor's basements, how deep they are.
How do you figure that out?
There's ways to do that. You can knock on the door and just, ask them to go in. You can say, I'm looking to purchase this property. Before I do so, people, appreciate that. In most cases, I want to check your basement foundations to see, just to make sure if I need to do something to protect it while I'm doing my work.
Interesting.
So you kind of get that information. You can even get very general information just by looking from the street, because sometimes there's those hatches in New York. You can count the steps of how many steps there are to the basement. You can easily know how deep their basement is from grade level. So that gives you a pretty good idea right there and then without doing anything.
Okay.
So that's the first thing I would say. Situation with neighbors, there's a lot of things that go into that. Second thing I would check is if there's any special authorizations and approvals you need from the city that are outside of the norm. We mentioned this before. E-designation, whether your property is listed as E-designation, whether it's landmarked, whether it's in proximity to a train, an MTA structure, whether underground or above ground. There's things that go along with that as well. Serious costs that go along with that, especially when it's an underground train that goes on the street.
Have you done projects with those obstacles? E-designation, MTA?
I have, yes.
What about new building in a landmark district?
I have. I've done all three.
Right. Nice.
Yes.
Way to go.
Yes. So the properties with, in a way, those properties can be opportunities for an more experienced developer
For sure.
that knows how to deal with them, knows how to take those costs in advance, because a lot of others would prefer to just shy away from those properties. So then the price would be more reasonable.
Staying on this topic real quick, what is it like building a new building in a landmark district? Because I just never fully understood how that works. And you see a lot of sites or pieces of land in landmark districts that just never get built.
Yeah. I mean, with landmark is a very difficult agency to deal with. You have to go through several processes to get your job approved, and it all depends. If you're going to do just interior stuff, it's very easy. But if you want to start adding up a story, if you want to change the windows even, it's not, changing the windows is not complicated, but it's not as easy as interior renovation, because Landmark looks at the exterior details of a building and they want it to be as close as possible to the historical photos of that property. They will never let you extend it on the back or add another story if it doesn't correlate with the rest of the block. If it'll look weird, if it look unrelated to the rest
From
of
the
the block.
backyard or from view
Both.
from the street?
You would be amazed, both.
So they
Not only from the street.
From the backyard.
Yes.
That's so interesting.
I built one landmark building where I literally had a meeting with the personnel that was in charge, the project manager in the landmark district.
Is this an NB or an Alt 1?
This was an Alt 1.
Okay.
Yes. They met me at the property, and we suggested a penthouse. So they wanted to make sure it's not visible from the street, from various angles. So they were walking with me on the sidewalk to both ends of the street, looking at the property physically, and taking pictures to make sure that it's, the penthouse is built. I had to build it sloped in a way that you can't see from certain angles. Yeah. So they're very, very particular in that way. So again, it all depends on the scope of work that you propose and you want to do, And,
Okay. Let's keep moving forward. So what other risk buckets and factors are there? We talked about neighbors. We talked about special special situations with like the E designation or the MTA or landmarks?
Right. So you've got another risk factor that's really is not really related to the deal itself. I would say financing.
Mm-hmm.
Financing is a factor that can eat up a project if not being used correctly. I would always tend to purchase properties cash instead of taking an acquisition loan if I don't have to. Simply because we always need to put more importance on the initial stages of the project. Just demolition, foundation, and to a lesser extent, structure. Those, and plans approvals in the beginning. Those stages can take longer, and it would be better for the project not to have an interest-bearing debt on the property during this time frame, because it can prolong for various reasons, and all those risks we've talked about. Everything comes into place in the beginning. If there's water in the ground, if you have to negotiate with your neighbors on an access agreement, it can take you a month and it can take you 6 months.
Yeah.
So, an interest-bearing debt is going to eat up a lot of that, and it's an unknown factor. So I would recommend just to buy them cash if possible, depending on the risk. Frost is a great example, for example, the deal that we're doing now. Why? Because I'm building a new building in between two properties that I own.
Yep.
So I don't have any neighbors, and I also don't have any demolition because there's no existing structures on the property. So I don't mind taking an acquisition loan because I know that my risk factors are very, very low. I don't have to negotiate with everybody. I can just get my plans approved, break ground right away.
Are you getting plans approved prior to closing?
That's always the goal, but not necessarily.
Yeah.
It depends on how much time the seller agrees to give us before we close. But that's always the goal. That's a great thing to do if you can. That's a great thing to do if you can.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it definitely shortens the time frames of the project as a whole.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so that's about it. That's what I would
that
say. These
works
are the
out
three
in both
buckets.
favors.
Those are the
So-
three buckets.
Yeah.
Those are the three main risk factors of the deal.
So what are the targeted returns on?
You know
on
what?
all
I
these
would add
projects?
one.
Yeah, let's hear it.
I would add one.
Okay.
I would add one.
I feel like there's more.
Yeah.
The,
No,
fir-
of
the
course
first one that
there's
comes
more,
to mind
but
for me is like just market timing. Like
oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean,
I don't know. I mean, but yeah, I get it. These are related to the deal. These could really
Yes.
hold you up in place.
in a situation where you found a piece of land, you're working in a market that you want to work, and you found a piece of land you want to buy. From that point on, what are the risks? Obviously, there's the risks that come before, which is what you just said. Should I even buy? Is the
Yeah.
market good? The market research is something you need to do in advance. But once you've decided to go on a project, you go on that crazy journey to build a building in New York City. These are the risks.
Yeah.
And one thing I would add to the bucket is insurances. Many developers, especially starter developers, do not understand the world of risk that they enter when they're starting to build a building in New York City, and specifically in New York City. Because here there's a very old law, there's a scaffold law and labor laws that make it very easy for employees that gets injured on the job, whether it's a fraudulent claim or a real claim, to sue the general contractors and the owners and the developers, as opposed to their direct employer, the subcontractor. So an employee that works for a structural subcontractor gets injured. The first thing he does, he makes a claim with the workers' compensation policy of his direct employer, but that's limited, 100, 200,000, sometimes more, but that's limited. He'll usually go for the for the bigger bucks. And the law in New York allows him to sue third parties in a liability suit. Third parties means the general contractor that hired this sub and the owners directly. So this opens up the owners and the general contractors to huge liability. Okay? So when the developer builds a building, he has to make sure that there's a coverage for those types of instances. So if there's a third-party lawsuit, his policy covers these types of claims. These policies are more expensive. It's a very challenging issue in New York, extremely challenging issue. You're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars to a proper insurance policy that insures you from labor law claims. There's way to lower that. There's project-specific insurances that people sometimes use.
Wow.
So there's way around this, but that's definitely a bucket.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yes.
That's a huge
Yes.
amount.
That's a huge amount, and if you're not properly covered, the reason why that's a problem is because there's precedences in the courts today where employees can lien the building.
Yeah.
They can just lien the building. So now you have a worker that's, God forbid, lost an eye or fell and can't work for a couple of years. You can put, we're talking in hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars of liens on the property. So then you can't sell it properly.
Wow.
You can't exit. It just spirals everything out of control. So those insurance policies are very, very important, especially in those larger projects. Those risks are more bound to happen.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So what are the targeted returns that you look for your investors?
Okay, that's a good question. I look for anywhere between 15 to 20% yearly. Anywhere between 15 to 20% yearly return to the investors. That's what I shoot for, and I can say that all the projects that we've done over the past 6 years have given that or more.
And what's like the timeline of a typical project from like when you buy it until the units get sold?
So if it's a property that requires demolition of an existing structure, I would say anywhere between 2 to 3 years.
That long?
Yeah, I know. It sounds long. I always say 3 because I like.
It does sound long.
Yeah, I always say 3 because.
Why does it take so long?
It takes you about 6 months to get the plans approved, and you can do the demolition simultaneously.
It's taking that long to get approved plans
Yeah.
for an NB and
Yes.
DOB?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
It can take a little less, but
And you
more
do-
often than not, it takes longer.
And you do demo plans in advance. You demo
Yeah,
while you're
simultaneous.
still. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. The reason why it takes that long is because people don't realize that it's not just the Department of Buildings. It takes you at least 2-3 months to get the set ready for DOB.
Yeah.
People forget about that time. They think, I filed the plans today. Why should it take 6 months? But
Yeah.
they forget about the time that it takes to the back and forth with your architect until you actually drill down the plan. So that takes 2 to 3 months, depending on your architect's availability. And then you submit it to the city. It can easily take 3-4 months to get that approved. So you put that all together, you have 6 months. 6 months at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
Then it takes you about a year to a year and a half to build the building in, certain size, the size that we're talking about. So you're already at a year and a half to 2. And then it takes you about 6 months to sell. CO, all the final inspections, paperwork, condo books. So you're talking 2 to 2.5, and it's good to add an extra 6 months as a contingency, just in case. So when I underwrite a property, that's what I take. Many times, commercial brokers, when they present me with a deal, and I ask, well, what was the underwriting that was done? I'm amazed to see that the financing cost that they're taking is half of what I'm taking. You guys are usually pretty good on the soft cost, hard cost, and those types of things. But financing always has to be more conservative, because financing at the last 6 months of the project can easily cost you $500,000. Because at that point, your loan is fully drawn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's enough. You have a small delay from the Department of Building or whatever the case may be to take another couple of months, a couple of millions of dollars of loans with today's rates.
Wow.
Easy to do the math.
Yeah.
I was just presented with a deal on where was it? Great location, on Union in Williamsburg. I believe it was can't remember the exact number. Doesn't matter. A corner lot on Union Avenue, and that was exactly the situation. Great property, but the underwriting that the brokers did, it wasn't you. It was a different company. Was 30% of what he should have been.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it seems like Williamsburg is your kind of niche. It's more specifically what we call like the Italian section of Williamsburg. I'm just curious to know like what makes the Williamsburg Greenpoint Market, what makes it so attractive? I mean, I've lived in Williamsburg for 8 years.
Right.
I love living there, but I'm curious to know your opinion from a developer's point of view. Like, why is that such an attractive market compared to the rest of Brooklyn and Manhattan too?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. Look, Williamsburg, and particularly East Williamsburg, presents a real opportunity, because if from most areas in East Williamsburg, you're literally 15 to 25 minutes away from every destination in mid-Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But you can purchase an apartment for hundreds of thousands of dollars less than what it would cost you, not only in the city, but also in prime Williamsburg. Prime Williamsburg prices today reach $1,800 a foot.
1,800. Yeah.
It's basically so.
Some comps are close to 2,000
Yeah.
on some of the new condominium sites in North.
So East Williamsburg is just a minute's walk from those areas, and you can save a lot of money. So it's only a matter of time of when those prices will catch up.
Yeah.
So the answer to your question is really transportation and proximity to those areas.
Yeah.
Not to mention the fact that East Williamsburg became a hub of coffee shops and art galleries, and you almost don't feel the need as much to go to Bedford Avenue and Broadway in the city anymore. You know, it's has such a good vibe. Feels even a little bit more, I would say, open, sunny.
Does feel more open, definitely.
Right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's got a really
I feel
nice
that's
vibe.
a big advantage. A disadvantage is parking.
Yeah.
A disadvantage is parking. I feel that that's kind of the next big thing.
Is that a big pushback you get from the boutique side of things?
Surprisingly,
like people
no.
that-
Surprisingly, no, because still many of the youngsters, I would say, that buy apartments with us, they don't even own
Yeah,
a
they don't
car.
have a car.
They rely on the public transportation. But if I would build a family-oriented building, I would definitely think about parking. So we're now building 390 Manhattan Avenue,
Yeah.
and we're building, 219 Frost. And one of my ideas on Frost was to do a couple of parking spots on the first floor, which we can do because we merge, we keep those properties on the same zoning lot. Because if it's just a 25-footer, the code does not allow you to put a parking spot. You need at least a 45 frontage. So that's another
The
cool
parking
thing.
spots go for money too, right? Like in my building, there's some parking spots for $80,000.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
yeah. It goes for a lot of money, and they also make the units sell.
Yeah.
Because it's very rare today to find a good building in Williamsburg, Greenpoint, the good areas that provides this.
Do you feel like the demand is changing? Like you mentioned, we've mentioned a number of times since we've been talking, like youngsters buying these
Yeah.
units. Like that might be like a single person, a young couple,
Right.
but I don't know. In my head, I just feel like the main demand drivers in New York City is evolving, and I feel like people are coupling up, people are having kids, people need more space, and so it just makes me wonder if like where the demand is on the condo side, if you need to reimagine the configurations. I feel like the townhouse market is just going crazy.
Yeah.
And people just want to have like extra space and the outdoor space
Yeah.
and like how does that factor into like your view on the condo market?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I agree with you 100%. People will always prefer to go for the townhouses. The thing is, it's an expensive product, right? It's a lot more expensive. Most of those townhouses, if they're renovated, you're talking in the millions. If they're unrenovated, then you need to renovate them. So it doesn't speak to. It's just not a viable option
I mean, if they're renovated, they're going for 4, 5, 6, 7 or more,
Even
all over the place.
all over the place.
Yeah.
In the prime areas of
They
Brooklyn.
take longer to sell too, right? Like when you resell them.
They take longer to sell. Yes, everybody wants that, but not everybody can afford that. And that's the reason why they're going for the condos. But what I try to do is to give them that feel as much as I can. So I would try to create outdoor space for every single unit in the building.
Mm-hmm.
I would try to do big balconies, connect yards with apartments. You've seen.
Yeah,
You've seen what I
156
do.
DeVoe.
How big
was
of a
one.
balcony would you like to do?
So the city allows you to go up to 7 feet from the face of the building. I don't know why, but developers don't usually take advantage of that. I definitely take advantage of that every inch. The code says you're allowed to, your balcony cannot exceed more than 50% of the width of your facade, and it can extend 7 feet, up to 7 feet from the face of your building. So if you have a 40-footer, you can do a 20 by 7
Beautiful.
feet balcony.
Yeah.
It's 150 square feet balcony. It's huge. It's the size of a room.
Yeah.
So that's what I do in those buildings.
Got it.
The roofs, the yards,
Yeah.
Plays a big factor.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you think the condos are just the fabric of New York? They're here to stay. People need that price point, that
Yeah.
amount of space, and
Absolutely.
you see a lot of demand for it.
I
the condos.
I see an increasing amount of demand for it,
Yeah.
unbelievable amount of demand for it, and
Wow.
it's kind of crazy to see.
Yeah.
With everything that went on lately with the interest rate. I mean, they're literally doubled, right?
Yeah.
People used to get mortgages for 3. We're talking 6 and 7. In some instances, if the credit is not as good, you're talking 8s. People still buy.
Have prices come down?
People still buy. Prices came down on specific type of product. Prices did come down, even in the good areas, and more so, it takes longer to sell, but it still sells. In the
Yeah.
good areas, it still sells. So, what I'm seeing is the strong areas which attract an audience that has you don't have to be a rocket scientist to get that, but they have just more financial ability. They transact. Those areas that people are more heavily relying on mortgages, it affects a lot worse. Places like Bed-Stuy and Bushwick condos and south from those areas as well. Takes a lot longer to sell. It does affect dramatically on prices. It's just because people are heavily relying on those mortgages.
Mm-hmm.
On Williamsburg and Greenpoint, you still have cash buyers, and you have people. Most of the buyers that come to me, they make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Google workers, Microsoft workers, high-tech workers, they have that ability. So they just try to shrink down on the mortgage, thinking, okay, we'll refinance when the interest rate goes down. But they have that ability, and since there's not a lot of inventory, we're seeing transactions. Slower, but we're seeing transactions. So those areas are just stronger.
Where are the buyers moving from? Like, are they already living in Brooklyn, or are they moving from Manhattan?
A lot of them are moving from Manhattan. I see a lot coming from the West Coast as well. I see a lot of buyers coming from the West Coast to the East Coast. And a lot of them are just first-time home buyers
Yeah.
that, they rent and they've wanted to purchase for a long time.
Yeah.
And the interest rate went up, so they waited. But now they've kind of seen, hey, the interest is not going anywhere. At least it kind of stabilized in a way. So they're coming back, realizing that it's probably not going to go down in the next couple of years.
These are people primarily in their 30s?
These are people primarily in their 30s, yes. That's what I see.
I see this as the biggest opportunity in New York City right now. I just feel like there's so many young people that have been renting for so long, and they're finally making enough money, and they're getting to the points in their lives when they're gonna put down roots, and I think if you can just deliver product for the end user, I think that's where just there's so much value, and there's
Right.
the amount of demand towards the end product. I just can't believe it.
Yeah, and I still think it's a smart decision from the end user, despite the high price, the price that seem to be high all the time, but they keep getting higher because of those areas. People that purchased a one bedroom from me just a year ago already made 100 to 100,000. Think about that.
Yeah.
If they rented, they would not have made that money.
Yeah,
So
there's
the
a lot
argument
of-
is to be made, will it continue? I think it will.
I think it has
Yeah.
for the next 5 years or more. I think it has a lot of legs.
Yeah.
I think it's just really interesting.
I think not only it will continue, I think when interest rates
Oh yeah.
decrease a bit, the value is going to go higher even more in those
is.
areas, that especially those areas that are close to the subway. I really see a significant advantage. A person that goes to buy a home, I would definitely recommend to buy something that's in close proximity, walking distance from the subway, because those areas, it's very hard for the value of those properties to go down. Very, very difficult. There's not a lot of them. There's just not a lot of them.
It's just so fascinating how all these young Manhattanites are just buying in Brooklyn. Like Brooklyn is just such a beneficiary of, I don't know, just everything going on in the market. And I guess just like
Right.
the population of the city and these people, these millennials that,
You see that also here.
yeah, they want to
Yeah.
stay here. They don't want to move to New Jersey or Long Island or Connecticut. They're urban people. They like this lifestyle.
Yeah.
They're going to have
Sure.
families in the city.
I think too, as somebody who sold properties in Manhattan and Brooklyn, that in Manhattan there's just no land left to really build, and everything that gets built is extremely expensive. It's very hard to have a car here. And in Brooklyn, like you can actually almost live like a kind of hybrid life of you can have your car, you can get in and out of the city, pretty quickly, but as well still have that urban life,
Yeah.
within you're 10 minutes from Union Square.
Yeah.
So I think it really gives you kind of both, like best of both worlds,
Yeah.
living in Brooklyn.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
And then on top of it, Williamsburg now, if you just go down North 6, you're basically on Broadway and Soho at this point.
Yeah.
It's there's really no difference at this point. So it's just crazy how much the neighborhood, Williamsburg in particularly, has changed within like the last 10, 15 years. It's insane.
No, you nailed it. I think it's exactly right. What you just said about being able to have a car and purchase an apartment that's lower priced, but still just being across, you can get there in a couple of minutes, no problem.
Yeah.
You don't have to. You have everything you need near your home as well if you want to. So,
And I think that's what separates Williamsburg from so many different markets. I mean, you have everything that you need in that area. You have the restaurants.
and you still live in the financial district.
I still live in the financial
For
district.
now.
I like walking to work. I like walking to work.
Can't
but
convince his wife to move out too.
yeah, that's a tough conversation. But I mean, Williamsburg has the best restaurants in probably New York City. I mean, any list you look down,
Yeah.
I would say Williamsburg is like always in the top 10. There's at least 4 or 5 of them,
Right.
and they're always new. There's always new ones coming up. So I think that's a huge draw. I think going back to what you were saying in terms of the houses, I think one of your biggest competitors are obviously some of these home buyers.
Yeah.
They're buying these buildings for more than what a developer would pay for.
The
and they-
houses that he's tearing
yeah,
down.
I mean, the houses that he's tearing down, a lot of these people from Manhattan or Williamsburg, they like the houses as is. They're just going to renovate them.
Yeah, you're
And
right.
that really changed after the pandemic
It
too.
really changed after the
That's
pandemic
interesting.
because they're getting their square footage. They're still getting it for 1.9, just a little bit higher than what maybe some developers would pay
Right.
for it. So they're just inching out and winning, but they're getting a full
They're
house
inching
and they're
out.
getting a big backyard.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I just saw a deal on, where was it, in Greenpoint on Eckford Street. I believe it was in the 60 or 62. It's just a house, a tiny house. You're talking about a 20-footer or something like that on a 67 feet deep lot, rundown, old 2-family, low ceilings. Somebody paid 2.2 million for this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as a development property, I wouldn't pay more than, I don't know, half than that.
Yeah.
Because of a price per square footage, you just can't.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's a prime example. People come and there's not a lot of these in the good areas. Those townhouses, even if they're unrenovated, they have a market, a strong market.
As a broker, that's how we tend to lose deals, or the only way we do lose deals is that way. I mean, countless situations on Skillman Avenue that we've talked about, a 25-footer, or a building on Consilia, like these buildings that just get bought by a homeowner or someone who's going to make it their home, and they'll renovate slowly. They're okay with dealing with what they have right now, and then they'll slowly renovate. So it's not all up front for them, but they're making sense of these prices.
Yeah, I feel that those properties that are smaller are almost like, you know, it's not even an investor's market.
No.
Because if you talk about even a 25 by 100, there's not a ton more value to an end user than a 20 by 70 lot, right? So an end user would probably pay a similar price. You know, that's why a 20 by 70 lot is you know, you can't.
Nothing you can do.
But a 25 by 100, an end user might say, well, that's, you know, I don't see, I'll just buy a little bit of a smaller property. It's still very big for me. So that's where we come in. And we have more like 110 Eckford that we did and those other properties.
Yeah. For a long time, the houses were worth more as development sites than as houses. So we were able to come in and basically get these owners, you know, $500,000 more or whatever it is than what any of the residential brokers or any of the end users would do. But, you know, getting to this point in Park Slope, for example,
That's close.
there's streets that aren't landmarked where you have these 25 by 100s and you have like a 2 or 3 family brownstone on them.
Okay.
But the brownstone is worth so much more than, you know, what it'd be worth as a teardown, as a piece of land.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
that's a segment of the market that it's always just gone to the end users. It's never been something we've been able to kind of get our hands on and sell to developers. But Williamsburg was so interesting, and we did this throughout Flatbush as well, where just the developers were able to put a price per buildable on it where it made sense, and we were able to get the owners' prices where it made sense for them to sell.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. I think you're right. But hopefully we'll still, you know, we'll still have some stuff that we can buy and develop. Ultimately, these neighborhoods, the reason why they attract the developers to begin with is because they have so much air rights. Those houses are small, and there's a lot of square footage to be added onto them. You know, so
Do you ever develop in zoning besides R6B?
yeah, of course. We did R6s, R6As, R7As. Yes, all over the place.
Okay. Very nice.
Yeah.
I think like Prospect is R6A. But that's
Prospect is actually an R6B, but 44 box, for example.
44 box, it definitely was. 16 unit.
Is an R7, and 1230 Bedford is an R6A, which gives you an FAR3, since it's a wide street. Bushwick predominantly is R6, which you can do community facilities as bonuses.
Yeah.
So yeah, various types of, and we keep searching for the larger ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems to be a trend that everyone's kind of going down, just going into the more larger sites, and that's another challenge. Obviously, the 25-footers are kind of being forgotten about, and in a market like this, everyone's looking for something much more substantial.
Yes, exactly.
Which makes our job a little bit harder, but it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, it'll expand.
Yeah.
Right? It always expands.
Absolutely.
Are there other neighborhoods or locations that you're really intrigued by?
It's a good question. I mean, I've never really was that much interested in the southern part of Brooklyn for some reason. I'm definitely interested in crossing the river and doing some stuff in the city.
Yeah.
I've looked over a couple of properties this year, and just North Brooklyn. I love North Brooklyn, Williamsburg, Greenpoint, Prospect Heights, Park Slope.
Yeah.
Those neighborhoods I work a lot at, Clinton Hill. I just know the type of product that's needed there, and the market very well. Real estate is very niche-like. It's very micro. You know, every neighborhood, sometimes every street, has a different value
Definitely.
to it. So it's very important not to just jump to a different location that you've never developed before before you do that really good research on,
Yeah,
just to make sure you're not making a mistake.
Yeah.
for sure.
What was your favorite project that you've done?
The favorite projects that I've done,
What was like all time?
all of them are my children. I love them all. I really do.
Good answer.
You can ask which ones I liked less. These are more popping up to my mind. I would say 658 Washington Avenue. I love.
Okay.
It's not sold yet, but it's a corner property. It's a corner property in Prospect Heights. It's just a nice piece. Has a store on the first floor, 3 large condos, 1 per unit with an elevator that goes directly into the unit. So I love that one.
Cool.
The reason why I like that so much was because there was a huge challenge in the beginning, and a beautiful thing came out of a very challenging situation because I bought that off of auction, and there was a demolition order on the property by the city. And I bought that at a very good price, but being too arrogant, I guess, I thought I would be able to salvage from the hand of the city pretty easily. And a week after the auction, crews were coming in the building, started knocking it down. So I had to fight tooth and nail, speak to the commissioner of the Department of Buildings almost on a daily basis, hire engineers to give opinion letters and stuff like that to stop everything that was going on. I couldn't believe how fast the wheels of the HPD were working to knock down this building.
Wow.
Because the city awards contracts to those demolition contractors, hundreds of thousands of dollars to knock those down. So they have a huge incentive to go and knock them down immediately. But fortunately enough, I was able to stop. I was able to get a 7-day stay, and then a 30-day stay, and then a 60-day stay. And slowly but surely, I was able to stop. But if I was not able to, I would have probably lost a lot of money. So, it turned out to be a very successful project, but it came out of a very challenging situation. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
So you said you came over from Israel. You're obviously Israeli. I'm half Israeli. And us as from doing this for over a decade now, it's kind of amazing to see like how many developers are Israeli. Israel is a very very small country. It's like about the size of New Jersey.
Right.
And it's just amazing to see like how much investment has come from such a small country. What do you think it is about Israelis that make them such good developers? And why do they like to build in New York compared to building in Tel Aviv?
Hang on, they build. These are guys that are doing condos.
Yeah, it's mostly condos.
Mostly condos. Yeah.
Like the Orthodox guys are building
Rentals.
rental buildings, and the Israelis are doing the condos.
Yeah.
It's so crazy how much of a difference it is. Like they won't even cross.
So what is it?
I mean, I am trying to think of a good answer. First of all, there's not only Israeli developers, right?
Of course.
There's other ethnicities that do the same thing.
Of course.
But definitely there's a very strong appeal for Israelis to do real estate. It's something in the blood. Israel is one of those countries that people like to own. There's countries in the world, you can see the statistics. Some countries in the world, it's mostly people rent, or it's like half and half. In Israel, people like real estate. It's something ancestral. That's the word for it.
Yeah.
It's like people want to own real estate and have this attraction to real estate from the beginning. A lot of the population in Israel, if they don't, they're somewhat involved in real estate, whether they purchase a property for themselves or they invest in real estate inside Israel, outside Israel, all over the world. So Israelis are not only in New York. You'll see a community of Israeli developers almost in every part of the world today. Yeah. South America, East Europe, West Europe. I mean, you'll see it all over the place. So it's just a very strong connection between real estate and Israelis. I feel it's just something that we attract to.
But do you not like the rental product?
It's a good question. I like it a lot. At the beginning, when you are looking to increase your equity, you need to do condo projects because you need to build, sell, and build up your equity.
But you have to pay taxes, like income taxes on
Yes.
your capital gains on
Yes,
sales, which
correct.
I feel like keeps knocking you down. Whereas the rental buildings, people buy at value, sell 1031. It keeps their equity level so much higher.
You'll still make a lot more money quicker doing a condo development, selling it, and then after a couple of years when you accumulate cash, it's a lot easier to move over to the rental side.
Got it.
And do those build and keep properties.
Is that a long-term goal of yours, or
Yeah,
is it-
it is a long-term goal.
yeah.
It is a long-term
Build
goal
and
to
keep.
create a larger portfolio of income-producing properties. Now it's less and less appealing here because of all the tax abatement programs, expiring.
Yeah.
So it makes
Oh,
it more
it's
difficult.
Tough right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes it tougher to make sense. But yes, that's the reason why I went this route to begin with,
A
because
lot of
that's really
guys-
the only way to accumulate equity. In the
A lot of guys, I mean, when interest rates were low, they were buying, and when there's all these value add plays, they're buying, adding value, and then just taking out a max out refi and using those proceeds to go do another project and go do another project. So they'd end up with all these buildings that are levered up all the way, but
Yeah.
they'd keep recycling the money in and out of deals, in and out,
Yeah.
and then they're left with a portfolio of 10, 20 buildings. And
Right. But don't forget that it depends where the money comes from, how you source the money.
For sure.
So if I work with, with a group of, in a $2 million deal, I work with a group of 20 investors. Each guy, gives me $100,000. These people don't care about holding the building and refining and stuff like
No,
that.
they want their money back.
They want their money back with a hefty return. So the only way I can give them what they want is by exiting.
Yeah.
If I refi, I in most cases you don't get all the equity out even.
No.
You leave some of it in.
Yeah.
Nowadays,
And it's
especially.
a longer term strategy. So that doesn't really work
Yeah,
when you source the money this way.
makes sense.
Now, if you build up your own equity, then you partner with a friend
Yeah.
or another partner, and it's your own money.
Mm-hmm.
Or you have partners that share the same strategy with you. It fits more. I feel the rental play fits more smaller groups that work with like-minded people. That's their strategy.
Yeah, or private investors.
Or private investors.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So it really depends how you source the money.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, well, we've been talking for a while. What else do you guys want to talk about? Anything? What else did we not cover?
Yeah, that's a good question. You guys can think of anything?
I think
I
I'm
can't
a lot
believe
of questions.
I can't believe your favorite deal wasn't from us, but it's okay. I'll get over it.
But my current favorite deal is from you.
Yeah,
The current, yeah.
love that deal.
That's a crazy deal.
Yeah. Well, I think in a market where everyone's like looking for bigger deals, right? Every conversation you have, it's like, don't show me the 25 by 100. Show me a 50-footer, a 75-footer. Show me bigger deals, which obviously they're very hard to do.
Yeah.
But you were creative enough, and obviously right
With your
place,
help.
right time
With
as
your help.
well. Managed to get yourself a bigger deal, where
Right.
a lot of people would have probably just passed it off because a lot of people did, and it just said not for me, not for me. And you got very creative, and
That's the way
figured
to
out
do
a
it
way.
in Brooklyn, really. To connect
Yeah,
properties together to create a larger deal.
yeah,
Because most of the lots are small.
Yeah,
Most of the lots
So
are small.
that's really one way of doing it. You can't always guarantee that it'll succeed
yeah,
because you can't always buy your neighbor, but sometimes it works, and here it did.
yeah. Definitely here. It worked in a big way, which was great.
Yeah.
Getting a beautiful 5-family out of it. One of
And
my
we did a
favorite.
subdivision.
Yeah.
It's actually my first subdivision, so it's another thing to enter the belt.
transfer of air rights.
That I did many times.
Okay.
But to subdivide a land in a certain way, there's a lot of requirements to that. So we've learned that through that process. So that's something I could definitely use in the future.
And it's a challenging process. I mean, we've had multiple conversations about it, but the only reason I knew it was even a little bit challenging was we sold the building on Driggs Avenue where another developer did the same thing, and he kind of vented to us as well of just like how challenging it actually is, and when he went through that process as well.
Yeah. The city has a lot of requirements when you want to subdivide a lot, especially when one of the structures is non-conforming. Because the house is non-conforming. It's built on 100% of the property, but it has the side lot as light and air.
It's built. How deep is it?
It's 100 foot, and the first floor is built 100 foot. But it's only a residential zoning, so you can't do that. That's grandfathered in. But once you cut, now you have your own separate tax lot. Now you have to comply. So I have to chop it, and there's certain rules and yard regulations. The minute you chop, you create 2 new lots, and those new lots need to comply.
So the building that is vacant and is built 100 feet deep, you're cutting
I'm cutting that.
the back half off.
Correct, in order to comply with light and air and yard regulations.
What
Zoning
goes
reg-
into like the structural components of cutting off like the back half of the property? Is that like a big issue or not? Nothing too crazy.
It's not too crazy. Not the easiest thing in the world. Would have to remove brick by brick. Probably do some support, some lateral support on the side walls while we're removing the back walls. But it's doable, totally doable.
Got it.
Yeah.
So you said you were an accountant.
Yeah.
So how did you get to know construction so well? Like what? Like I'm sure that was a big learning curve.
It was. Like I said, when I came here, I started as a project manager, and for an Israeli group.
Yeah.
And the way they do it is just throw stuff at you. So they naturally assume because I was a CPA, I know how to build a building, which I don't know why they did that. But they gave me a set of plan, and they showed me the address, and they told me just be on your way. So now I had to start reaching out to the architects and the engineers and the banks and the investors. It was a toughening experience, but because I dealt with everything, that's how I was able to learn so quickly. All the tricks of the trade.
Got it.
So I was just handed a set of plans and a piece of land.
Wow.
That's the best way to do it.
It really is.
I guess
Nice.
I'm interested. How did you find, like, a lot of people, obviously everyone wants to build something and be a developer, but like how did you find the proper GC, the proper architect to like work with you? Because I think that stuff is obviously probably some of the most challenging.
Right.
Because to find a GC and one that you don't have to stay on top of,
Right.
or one that you know is actually doing his job.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially in those smaller projects, it's one of the biggest things. If you hire one GC to do the entire thing, it takes up a lot of the profit margin in those smaller deals. So the way most guys that build those, smaller sized buildings would do, they would break down the job.
Mm-hmm.
So, they would either be their own GC, basically. They would break down the job to their own plumbers, electrician, and you build your crew over time. Yes, you have some bad experiences with subs, so you replace them over time. You keep the good ones, and you kind of create that good system going on. And that's how I do it. I have a GC license, so I pull my own permits. I have my own insurances. And the subcontractors are working directly under this company, so I don't have to go and find a GC.
Gotcha.
It's not necessarily a bad choice, but it's definitely going to cost you more.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely going to cost you more.
For sure. Could be worth it for some people to pay
Yeah,
more
absolutely.
to not have to deal with the headaches as long as they get the right person to do it.
Yeah. It all comes down to the numbers,
Yeah.
and time is a big factor.
Yeah.
If a GC can save you time, and you save on the interest,
Good point.
then you might pay 100 or 200 more on the construction side, but you'll save it on the financing side.
Really
so
good point.
it's But you can definitely, going back to Donald's question, you really have to research the guy, just like anything else. You have to see what work he did before. Because when you get stuck with a person that's not very good, that's a big deal to a development project. A non-performing contractor can really delay your project, significantly costing you a lot of money as well.
Oh yeah.
So that's
And the headaches.
and the headaches.
Yeah.
So yeah, you got to use somebody that has previous experience and can prove it to you. You got to know how to ask him the right questions. How does he deal with certain issues if they come up? What type of machinery he uses? Does he sub out the work? Does he have his own workers? Does he have a project manager on his behalf that's going to control the job? So those kinds of questions are really, really important.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, cool. I think we can, unless there's anything that you'd like to bring up separately.
We got to keep something for the next podcast, right?
All right, let's keep it. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure
Absolutely.
it was fun, so I'm sure we'll
No,
have
this
more.
was great. I think we all learned a lot, and
Me too.
yeah, the experience that you have and the ability to handle just all the aspects of this development process is amazing.
Thank you
So
so
yeah,
much.
congrats on all the deals.
Absolutely.
And let's keep it going.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
keep it going. Thank you guys for the amazing work that you do, and I just enjoy. I can't explain in words how much I enjoy working with you. I found a friend in Donal and in
Thank you.
you, Justin, and it's good. You guys are professionals.
Yeah, thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Yeah.
All
Absolutely.
right, that's it. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Thanks, Arik.